Welcome to this video about Japanese Driftmaster, an open-world racing game set in Japan, launched yesterday. Having had early access to May 21st, 2025 for about a week, I've been able to test various aspects and form my own opinion. My opinion on the game is final. In this video, I'll share my opinion. I'm going to try to tell you whether Japanese Driftmaster is a good game or not, and I'll try to answer your question. Should you buy this game? Japanese Driftmaster? So, as for the structure of the video, we'll start with a quick reminder of the important information you need to know about the game. Then we'll talk about the things that are really well done, so the truly positive points. After that, we'll discuss the things that are just average in this game. And finally, to wrap up, we'll also talk, of course, about the negative points. Because even though for me this is clearly a little gem among indie racing games, there are still things that could be improved. There are clearly things that aren't done well yet, and we'll discuss those as well. Anyway, if you've played Japanese Driftmaster, feel free to share your opinion about the game in the comments below the video. Let's begin with the essential details about Japanese Driftmaster. So, we're looking at an open-world racing game set in Japan. It takes place in the modern era, so in the 2020s. We'll find all the traditional game modes there. Grip racing, drifting, time trials, but also drag racing and delivery missions. So there's a bit of a role-playing aspect to the game, which is pretty interesting. The game will feature a story, which is a positive aspect. Because while most racing games kind of skip the story, this game actually offers one. And it's a story that's not watered down. So that's actually pretty cool. We're dealing with a SimCAD type game when it comes to driving, so it's pretty accessible to new players, who will be able, let's say, to play the game without being punished by the driving, which could be too difficult. On the other hand, the game can still be quite demanding and will provide a thrilling experience for players accustomed to racing games. The game is currently only available on PC via Steam. The developers are a small studio, a really small one. Clearly, what you have to realize is that here, we're very far from the kind of budgets a big studio has. For example, they would be developing something like The Crew or Forza. Here, I think we're talking about those kinds of budgets. For this game, the budget is 100 to 300 times lower than those of the previously mentioned games. Since it's a small studio, they have limited resources. And before they start developing a console version, they need money. And to get money, well, they're simply waiting to sell the PC versions. So basically, to put it simply, if Japanese Driftmaster is a success, if it sells well and they manage to make money, they'll make a console version. If it flops, which I don't expect, I believe it will still be a commercial success. In that case, there won't be a console version. The thing is, the developers are really attached to what they're offering. They refuse to outsource the game's development. Console versions will take some time, so be patient. It will probably happen, but probably not in 2025. So, as I was saying, we're going to start by talking about the positive points in this video. We'll begin by discussing the story of this Japanese domestic market. For me, that's what sets it apart from games like Need for Speed, Forza, The Crew, and even Caesar and Solar Crown. This game, Japanese Driftmaster, offers a story that will be available in the game as scans, in the form of manga. So, I'm not going to spoil it for you. There are 5 chapters, and I'm on the 3rd one. Each chapter, let's say, is a little bit. Its antagonists, its main characters, its important characters, and we're going to go through the different chapters with our own character, Tuma, who is Polish. I won't spoil the main story of the game for you, but Tuma, after an important, rather negative event that happened to him in Poland, he decided to come to Japan to try his luck in the world of auto racing, and will have to make a name for himself in the Japanese scene by winning races by simply being the best driver. So, it's a scenario that's, let's say, a bit standard for a racing game. Except that with the manga system, they've added a lot of plots and subplots, a lot of information about the lore, so of course about Tuma, but also about the other characters. There are romances, there are fights. I don't know how to say this, but there's also violence. And what I really appreciated overall with the story of this game is that it stands out a bit from other stories. Let's say the kind that games offer nowadays, which are a bit too nice, a bit generic. Here, we find a story like the ones we used to see back in the games from the 2000s. It's not very different in terms of, I don't know how to say it. It's not really about the atmosphere, but maybe more about the intention. Like what we could find back in the days of Need for Speed Underground 1 or 2, you know? So it's not a story. How should I put it? It's not very progressive. There you go. But overall, I think it fits pretty well with the underground racing vibe that we're going to find in this game. So, there's a story, and honestly, it's nice. Because the fact that it's in manga form and that we can reread it at any time. Through the smartphone with the different story scans. Here. Well, I think it's pretty cool. So, we'll see how it turns out. By the end of the story. Right now, I'm about halfway through, by the way. In terms of playtime, I'm at about 10 hours. So, I've spent quite a few hours playing farmer to buy myself, for example, the R34 that you see here. I haven't spent 10 hours on the main story, but probably around 5 hours. So, in my opinion, the main story ends in something like 10 hours. Something like that, between 8 and 10 hours. Maybe less if you really do it in a straight line, just farming, but there's still plenty to do. So, clearly, that's already a positive point for me, the story. Another positive point, and you'll be able to see it throughout this video. It's true that right now, at night, it's maybe not the most obvious. But the game's map is really cool. So it takes place in Japan, which of course makes players happy. Who have been waiting for a realistic open world in Japan for quite some time. The map is already quite large, which is really impressive. The size is unknown as the developers haven't provided specific details about it. I think it's around 40 to 50 square kilometers, but more importantly, we have 250 kilometers of roads, so that's a lot. Anyway, you can see it right away. There are a lot of winding roads, with lots of drift corners, and a lot of elevation changes. That's pretty nice, honestly. It offers a unique driving experience going uphill and downhill, and provides stunning views. When you arrive on a road near the volcano, a bit higher up and see the city in the distance, with the fake Mount Fuji in the distance. Honestly, our scenery is beautiful. You don't get that in games with flatter maps, like those set in Mexico. Despite the map's small size, it provides numerous road options for travel and exploration. Several different biomes. So, obviously, here we are in the big city in the south, which is a modern city with docks, with an industrial area, with tall skyscrapers, and with a bit of life. Still, it's pretty well done in that regard. We have a whole area, let's say more of a tourist area here, which we'll go through later when it's a bit brighter, just to show you a little. But we have a beach, and let's say a whole neighborhood with houses that are more upscale, more chic. The starting area of the game surrounds Lake Ikema, which is honestly exceptional. I think it's really cool. Over there, there's a very unique atmosphere, in the sense that it really feels like you're in a Japanese village, with really narrow roads, little cafes, small restaurants, and little shops all around the lake. I think it's quite pretty, and it's a really peaceful place. In this area, there are many elevation changes and country roads. And then, we have a large highway network that goes all around the map. So, we have a kind of ring road where you'll be able to hit high speeds and get off whenever you want. To reach one of the different districts of the map, so we have a map that is varied, that still offers different biomes with a big city. And that's really nice. And on top of that, we have a map that offers routes to real tracks. We'll have Edbisus at the top of the map, and we'll have it at the bottom. Tsukuba, although it's actually called Tsukuya, is a replica of the Tsukuba circuit. So official tracks that will be present. Well, not official, but replicas of official tracks. Available on the map that you can access, but not the open world. You can join them for now, but not actually enter them. I haven't found how to do that yet. These will be places where you'll take on challenges that are kind of like CCU. For those who played Underground 2, you'll know what I'm talking about. These will be, let's say, more official events, with sponsors on closed circuits, like a championship. Some that you'll have to complete from time to time to progress in the story, which takes place on these famous official circuits. So, the map is really varied, it's really cool to explore, because what's nice is that the environment isn't completely destructible. So you can't do it like on a Ford. At 10, we broke through the barriers and went straight from A to Z on the map. There's no real off-roading. There's a little bit, but we'll revisit that later in this video. We can't. This map cannot be crossed in a straight line, which means we have to follow the whole road, pay attention to the scenery, go through all the turns in different areas. And so, we discover the map, we notice lots of little details, and we see all the hard work the artist put into creating the map. And I'll add a little detail about the map. You can't teleport everywhere, you can only teleport to the houses. We'll unlock the various garages as we progress through the story. There are around 5 or 6 of them, which lets you teleport a bit between the different biomes. But there isn't fast travel everywhere, so it also encourages you. Let's explore the map by driving around, which is necessary for gaining car experience points. We'll discuss that later, since I think they also did well in that aspect. They found a good compromise. So, it's really a game that encourages you to drive, and it's still enjoyable to drive. You'll frequently traverse stunning environments featuring a day-night cycle and weather effects like rain. How will that impact the experience? Obviously, you'll have a different vibe and other things, and also maybe some details that I particularly appreciate in the game. The car sounds are generally cool, with some great ones depending on the specific vehicle. Of course, because there are some cars that might be a little better made than others. But here, for example, I've had an R34 since the beginning of the gameplay. We'll change later, don't worry. I think the R34 sounds good, and it sounds the way I want it to sound. The sound may not be the most realistic, but it's what we want. That's an R34. After watching Fast and Furious 2, the sound was quite demonstrative, yet still nice. So, overall, the car sounds are good. That's a small example with the R34, but overall, they're really good. They were recorded from the real models. It also changes as you upgrade your car. So, a stock car won't sound the same as a fully upgraded race car. Another thing I appreciate is the fact that there's a bit of a role-playing aspect. For car management, you can control the windshield wipers. You can control the headlights, for example, with off, low beam, and high beam. You have the turn signals, you have the hazard lights, and you also have. And that's pretty cool. A game that offers some pretty cool cameras, especially this one, which really gives a strong sense of speed, I think, and acceleration. And it also increases the car's volume. Like, we get a much more saturated sound, which is much more present, and we have an interior view that's really well done. With real, fully animated hands. What I mean by that is, unlike other games that take place in Mexico, for example, where the steering wheel animation stops about here, here we get a full turn and a half on each side. When using a steering wheel to play, it's convenient because you can sync the in-game animations with your actual driving actions. For the credibility of the open world, the game, and the immersion, it's vastly superior. So, we really have quite a few little things that are well done. The game's progression is well balanced, striking a good equilibrium between grinding and not grinding. So, you see at the top of the screen, damn. I have 2 levels. I have level 22 on my car and I have level 20, so level 20. As a driver, what's pretty good is that the driver level will unlock things for you. Car upgrades. So everything like turbo, brakes, tires, all the upgrades that will increase the car's performance, so that's not it. You won't have to redo it every time you change cars. That means if you buy a new ride, for example, if I go to the dealership and buy a new car, being at level 20, I will have already unlocked it there. Quite a few performance upgrades, but as for the cosmetic upgrades, like all the kits, bodywork, bumpers, hoods, even everything that's really visual, like rims and so on, all of that is unlocked based on the level of the car in question. So here, for example, I have an R34, I'm level 22. I'll level up cars by earning drift scores or performing stunts. You saw, when I drift, there's a little score that shows up. If I drift for a long time, that'll give me a higher score. At the end, it gets converted into experience points, and that experience points increases my car level. And that's how I'll unlock customizations. So basically, if you change cars in the game, you won't be at a disadvantage. Similar to Forza Motorsport, you won't need to grind to make it perform well and win races. To unlock all customization options for a car, you'll need to spend some time grinding with it. They've found the right balance, allowing players to progress without restrictions and freely switch cars. To truly customize a car, you must tinker with it, which will also help you develop an attachment to it. So, I think they've found the right balance on that point. So, actually, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the customization and the car upgrade system, which I think is also pretty nice. To demonstrate, we'll switch things up a bit for some fun. Customization options are extensive, but depend on the car models you're driving. Some cars have more visual customization than others. For example, more body kits or more, different exhaust pipes. But overall, we're still having a pretty good time. I'll show you some examples of what you'll find, but the customization is well handled. You have pre-made body kits with references to existing, real-world kits. For example, here we clearly have the kit from Fast and Furious 3 from Tokyo Drift, Han's kit, on the Mazda RX-7s. So we're going to have the rims, we're going to have the different hoods. So here, parts with fake brands, but inspired by real parts that exist. But in addition to the body kits, we're also going to have parts. So that means if I want to have a complete kit, I can put one on. But if I want to have other parts to give my car a more personalized look, I can do that too. What? So here, we have front bumpers, we have fenders for the wide body kit, which we can also do separately from the complete wide body kit offered here. We have the mirrors, we have the side skirts, we have the rear fenders, the round fenders, the rear bumpers, the tail lights. So on this car, we can't customize the front lights, but there are cars where we can. Exhaust pipes are among the common customizations available for various cars in the game. Some have more, some have less. You can also customize the interior. Everything like the steering wheel, seat, gear knob, and telemetry. Although I'm not sure what telemetry is. I installed it to see, but I didn't notice any difference. So I think it's going to be a small screen, normally, with information from the car displayed, except here, nothing shows up. So I don't know if it's a bug or if I just didn't understand. So that was the customizations. As for upgrades, those will be unlocked. I was telling you that the player level will also be pretty well supplied. It will depend on the cars. You'll find all the typical parts. By the way, I just unlocked a turbo for the RX-7. All the parts that are a bit typical. Breakdown of your car with suspension, engine, steering system, gearbox, brakes, tires, and nitro. Because there is nitro in the game, but we don't have it at the beginning, it unlocks about halfway through the game. Some cars allow switching between four-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive, enabling drifting. For example, in the back, there is this feature. There is a system that allows you to tune these cars. And what's pretty cool is that we have some really nice settings. As long as you've already installed some slightly upgraded parts that allow you to tune them. For example, we'll be able to limit or not the engine speed. We can change the turbo pressure. We can actually modify pretty much all the car's parameters. And on this point, I think it's one of the more arcade-style open games that goes the furthest in terms of tuning options. You can change many things now, and even more in the future, although that time hasn't arrived yet. We'll also be able to make presets, meaning that in the game, since we'll be doing both drifting and grip racing, you'll be able to make presets and decide to switch presets at the last moment before an event to have the right settings for a car. So, that's pretty cool too, still among my positive points. For me, the game's physics are actually quite nice. I appreciate that this game, while centered on drifting, offers more depth and variety beyond just that aspect. We start with a drift arc in the game's story, but then we have a grip arc, and after that, there's more of a drag arc. We'll discuss that later. The gameplay offers good variety. What I like about this game is that even though it's called Japanese Drift Master and clearly drifting plays an important role, it's not a drift physics engine, it's a classic, grippy physics engine with which you'll still be able to drift. And that changes everything a bit, because it makes the driving phases, let's say just cruising around like we're doing now for example, quite enjoyable. Because we have a physics engine that's not overly slippery, it's a logical, classic physics engine with which you'll still be able to drift. Drifting can be quite demanding at times to achieve the perfect balance. Of course, it will depend on your experience with the game. It's not difficult, but to pull off nice, well-linked drifts, you can feel that there's still a bit of a challenge. The game features two physics systems, including an arcade-style physics system, to create a unique gameplay experience. You can choose this option, which is more suited for controller players. I'll reactivate it for better arcade mode gameplay. Basically, the steering doesn't react the same way. It's a bit like in Forza, when you set the steering to simulation mode, it makes it more sensitive. For serious players using a steering wheel, simulation mode is good. But for those playing with a controller, it's better to stay in arcade mode. So here, we have a more sensitive setup, but it's really a setup that's made for players who use a steering wheel. So we have physics that are still pretty realistic, quite logical, and pretty enjoyable. There are a lot of differences from one car to another. Clearly, the R34 doesn't drive at all like the RX-7, for example. And so, I would say the question is going to be asked. You asked compared to a Forza, how is it? The driving? It's always difficult to answer that question, because Forza and its physics, because they have their own physics engine, Forza Tech, clearly, this is not Forza's driving. But I think that in terms of realism, it's A bit like what you find in a Forza Horizon, actually, or an older generation Forza Motorsport. Many factors are considered, regardless of using a controller or steering wheel. You can really have a great time, whether you're a new player or an experienced player who will simply make better use of the car. But we're clearly not dealing with a simulation either. That would require you to have a steering wheel or spend 20 hours with a car to start getting to know it. So, I think they've also found a good balance there. The game is interesting to drive, to explore, and little by little, I think it will delight all kinds of players. We'll finish with the last big positive point of the game, the graphics. I wanted to discuss it, but I waited for daylight so we could see it better. We'll observe as the video progresses. The game is beautiful, actually. That's it. Dependent players often have good ideas but struggle to execute them technically, which can be a hindrance to their progress. Because, well, it's 2025. And clearly, if someone offers you a good game concept, but graphically it's a bit sloppy, well, you're not going to like it. And honestly, the game's art direction is already cool to begin with. Like, the artistic and visual choices are cool, but on top of that, I think graphically it's actually pretty detailed. I don't know what engine it was made with, I couldn't tell you just like that. But I think the environments are beautiful, and the cars are beautiful and well detailed. And I think the speed effects, the particle effects, the effects in general, except maybe the smoke, which isn't very noticeable, are overall well done. So, is it as beautiful as a Forza Horizon? No, definitely not. I know some AAA or AA racing games that had much bigger budgets and aren't as good looking as this. Obviously, actually, so we have beautiful environments that will definitely change, whether it's day or night, which will also make a difference. Depending on the weather, there are wind effects in the trees. The rain also looks really good visually, so we're dealing with a game that really has a lot going for it. I think the technical aspect is well handled, and the graphics are not a drawback. So, is it a graphical masterpiece? No. I think it's beautiful. By the way, a quick mention for the optimization. Answering that is always tricky for PC gamers. For me, it runs well. Even on ultra settings with the sun rising, we still get beautiful visuals. It's very clear. For me, the game looks nice and runs well, but I've seen comments from people on Steam saying that for them, it really doesn't run well. So yeah, it's going to depend on your setup. It might also depend on whether you're lucky or not. That's always a bit of a drawback. Also, let me remind you that, as usual on Steam, when you buy a game, you can play it for 2 hours. And if you have a technical problem, you can get a refund. So potentially try it out, and if you don't like it, just get a refund. Or if it doesn't run well, but for me, it's fine. Honestly, I think the game looks nice, and I think it's smooth and runs well. Honestly, that's not always true. Oh, it's starting to rain, which is perfect. So now, we're going to have a little demo of driving in the rain. Well, let's move on to the average point now. Because there are still some average things. In this game, there is no damage. That's the first average thing, which will be quick to show. So, for example, well, let's hit this. You see 0 damage, neither mechanical nor visual. So, in the story, there are some, because there are moments when it's scripted, where you'll have problems with your car. But keep in mind that it's only for the story. So there is no damage? Well, in my opinion, that's because the cars are licensed. Here, we have a genuine Mazda RX-7, not a copy. It bears the authentic Mazda logo and is officially recognized by Mazda. And when the cars are licensed, in general, developers don't really like their cars to be able to get damaged. That's the reason why in most modern games, there's less damage than in games from 10, 15, or 20 years ago. Don't rely on that, there won't be any damage. Another average point? Clearly the game's car list. So, it will get better over time because there will be updates. We'll talk about it a bit later in this video, by the way. Because for now, it's one of the points we can't judge. The sequel to the game. Obviously, it's currently unclear how many new features will be included. Every X months, normally every 3 months, there's a new update for the game. In any case, that's how it's going to be the pace for the first year after the game's release. According to the game's roadmap, a minimum of 2 new cars will be added every 3 months, but the exact number is unknown. But let's say there are 3 or 4 added each month. It's still going to take quite a while before we have a really comfortable car list, because the current car list in the game, what's there? There are around 30 to 40 cars, which isn't necessarily an issue since we plan to spend time there. In the end, a lot of time with each of them to farm custom parts and all that, so it might be enough. The thing is, there are almost only Japanese cars for now, but I think that's going to change. Because in the story, there are references to American cars or German cars. And we even saw some artwork from the game, where we could see BMW M3S and other cars that aren't in the game yet. So, I think it changes with the updates. I think with the updates, we're going to have different themes, and those themes will be an opportunity to add others. Currently, there are only Japanese cars, including classics like the RX-7 and A34, providing a diverse selection. Only cars that are a bit less well-known, like the Nissan Laurel, for example, or the Civic, for example, really more niche cars. Or even a bit of a joke, like K-Cars, for example, the Honda Beat. Or the T-Truck from Suzuki. So I think there are some things that are a bit niche, but we still have a car list that doesn't have a lot of cars. And clearly, we mostly have a car list with only Japanese cars. So, if you don't like Japanese cars, this game might be a little bit frustrating. And it's true that it's a shame because since the game is really a gem in many ways, it's kind of stupid, you know? Next. Let's move on to the negative points, because for me there are two negative points. So the first one is about the drag mode. So, I'm going to have a hard time showing you what I'm going to show you in this video. Regarding the drag mode, because right now, I don't have any drag events available on the map at the moment. Anyway, I do have some, but they're in the early game events. And it won't be obvious. But basically, this game offers a good variety of events by default. So, as I was saying, there's grip, time trials, and one-on-one races. And some events are a bit scripted. Certain events are particularly memorable, such as drifting with a girl in the car to impress her. It reminds me of Street Racing Syndicate from back in the day, but it's much less awkward. No worries. The drag racing in the game is currently unsatisfactory. I was pleased to see drag racing return in the game, just like it was in Underground 2. I'll share some images from the stream to demonstrate this. It's drag racing where you have to shift gears, where you have to shift at the right moment. The slider system changes color, requiring tire warm-up. Drag racing is currently bugged. The timing of the fix is unknown, but it's clear the artificial intelligence in drag races needs work. Sometimes they don't even start, sometimes the sound disappears, and sometimes you can feel that the drag physics just go completely crazy. So, it doesn't stop you from finishing the events, it's just that, well, the drag events really aren't very interesting to do, because almost nothing happens in them. For me, one last significant downside remains quite irritating in the game. While not a deal breaker, it can still be somewhat bothersome. So to show you that, we're going to go to a random event. There's a problem with the artificial intelligence clearly in this game. So, first of all, there's a problem with the artificial intelligence. I mentioned it before. Sometimes it doesn't even start. Overall, the game's artificial intelligence is too simple. It's not more complicated than that. It's the same. I might show you some images from yesterday's live stream to illustrate this for you. Because right now, well, clearly, we're on a video for life. I won't progress too far in the story or races, so I can continue the Let's Play live without missing any parts during the live stream. Clearly, the AIs are excessively nice and slow. Honestly, it's a bit of a shame because the game, in many ways, is really cool. And during the race, it's a bit ruined. Because the AIs take too long, there's no challenge, there's no difficulty. Like, even with some pretty basic cars, without too many upgrades, we can win easily. I believe it's a real shame because it removes all the challenge and excitement that a race can offer. The driving and open world are enjoyable, but ultimately being in the open world itself is almost more fun, doing side activities, than doing the races, at least the grip races from the base game, where the artificial intelligence is really too slow. Fortunately, in Drift, there's still some challenge. Luckily, certain events will prove more challenging than others, with some standing out as particularly difficult. However, the artificial intelligence has issues. It's slow, sometimes brakes unnecessarily, and fails to restart. Sometimes the speed limit may be as low as 30 kilometers per hour. There are even modes where it gets annoying. For example, there's a mode where you have to stay as close as possible to your opponent while drifting to get a higher score multiplier, without touching or overtaking them. Except in this mode, the artificial intelligence is too slow to overtake. Driving slowly while drifting is nearly impossible, as the artificial intelligence manages to drift at just 15 kilometers per hour. Because it's scripted, you just can't do it, right? For me, that's the annoying aspect of the game that I really hope the developers will address soon. Because it's pretty annoying to have a lot of well-done things in the game, only for it to end up during the challenge. But still, we're playing a racing game and the races themselves aren't that interesting to do. So, after that, I'll still add a little detail about that. Maybe it's also because I had the game early and I didn't want to make progress in my Let's Play, so I could do it live. I farmed a lot to buy big cars, especially the R34. And actually, when I started the story and the career, I had cars that were maybe much more powerful than the artificial intelligence. It's true that I sometimes found myself in an R34 against old Toyotas or things like that, so obviously the match was already decided. Even after reaching the game's halfway point, I feel it hasn't changed much. I still completely destroy the artificial intelligence. So, work in progress, I hope. No, there's another point that I can't judge for now, so we'll see in the long run. And that's the game's support, the pace of updates, and their content. Will it be enough? Will it be what the community wants? I hope so, and I think so, because for now, the game checks pretty much all the boxes of what the community was asking for. So, in my opinion, it's going to be the same for the updates. I don't anticipate any unpleasant surprises. We'll discuss it further later. In summary, here are my overall thoughts about this game. Clearly, for me, this is a gem. Clearly, this is a game that came out of nowhere. It was developed in 2 years by a small team of passionate people who simply made the game they wanted to play. Actually, it's really just some guys who one day said, well, I'd like to play a game that doesn't exist, that nobody wants to make. Racing AAA games have become a formulaic recipe that works, but developers have rested on their laurels. So clearly, this game that I'd like to play or this game I'd like to play that nobody wants to make, I'll make it myself. And that's what they did. And honestly, I think it's a big success. Except for the artificial intelligence, the car list, and the dating mode, which really need to be reworked. The rest is just bangers. The physics, driving, map, graphics, and story are all excellent. There are plenty of good things that are handled better in this game than in big AAA titles that have way bigger budgets. I highly recommend this indie game. It's a hidden gem. It's really the kind of cool project to support and play because it's actually the beginning of something. This is the creation of the studio. They made this. Imagine their potential in 5 years with increased investment, funding, resources, and developers. Just imagine, right? So, it's really a gem. Afterwards, of course, like I was saying, you can try it out on Steam, get a refund after 2 hours if you don't like it. You're not really taking too much of a risk either. I'm taking advantage of it too. I want to clarify something I didn't mention earlier in the video. It might be a bit late, but that's how it goes with live commentary. What's that? Regarding the game's economy as well, for me, that's one of the things that was done pretty well. It's true that I didn't mention it earlier, but it might seem a bit strange because actually we're dealing with really big numbers. Because we're dealing in yen, like right now, I have 1,000,000 yen, 1,000,006. You might think that the game is super easy, like Forza, and that I'm loaded with cash, so the game's progression happens way too quickly. 1,600 yen, we did the math. The 1,600,000 yen I have is actually a bit less than 10,000 euros. The price of parts, such as body kits for the R34, can cost up to 900,000 yen, depending on the specific part. So you earn large amounts, but you also spend large amounts, which means that, in the end, it's more of a balanced economy. There's not really a need to grind, but you won't get crazy rewards by upgrading your cars. I think it's pretty well balanced there too. So there you have it. We've pretty much covered everything for this Japanese domestic market. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, because there are definitely some points I forgot. Obviously, we'll keep exploring the game tonight. We'll continue the story live. Feel free to follow me on Twitch using the link you'll find below this video. Support the channel through descriptions, comments, Prime, or other means. If you need game tutorials or have questions, feel free to ask in the comments. If you want to know more about a particular car model, if you want me to show you the customizations or the settings or anything else, don't hesitate. There you go, and well, I hope you enjoyed it. Well, that's it. We've covered everything. Thank you for watching this video. And, well, listen, see you tomorrow for something new and see you tonight live, simply for the next live on this game.